Imagine an actor. Women's dream. Director's favorite. But then he reached a point where he couldn't even stand to look at himself in the mirror. Mickey Rourke's story actually begins like a Hollywood fairy tale. But instead of fairy dust at the end of the tale, there is blood in the ring, broken bones, and regret on his face. Imagine it. But before you imagine it, if you liked my videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you're curious about the lives of famous people, feel free to mention it in the comments and suggest content ideas to me. Now imagine there was a man so handsome that, in the 80s, Hollywood's biggest producers opened their doors to him. Women hung his posters on their walls, and directors used his face to sell their stories. But years later, the same man can't even bear to look in the mirror. This paradox sums up Mickey Rourke's life. So, how did such a rise turn into such a dramatic fall?
It's on a soap that sings Rick Springfield, then listening to Bruce Springsteen. You know, it's like, you know what I'm talking about? All right.
Well, yeah, I saw Mickey at the this place or that place, and trying on bras. So, I don't really give a shit, But it's when my mother calls up and it's in the,
in the right direction. Yeah. I started not liking the business, not liking myself, and I was slowly self-destructing at a pretty fast rate. If that makes sense. I felt like I didn't belong doing what I was doing. Meaning the acting. I don't know.
Mickey was born in 1952 in Schenectady, New York. His real name was Philip Andre Rourke Jr. Life wasn't easy even as a child. When his father abandoned the family, Mickey was still very young. His mother remarried, and suddenly Mickey found himself in the shadow of a stepfather who wasn't exactly warm. Home life was far from peaceful. In many interviews, Mickey would later admit that he suffered abuse as a child, growing up under constant pressure and harsh discipline. That experience planted anger inside him, along with a defiant streak against the world. That anger is what led Mickey to boxing. At 12 years old, he stepped into the ring and quickly discovered it was the only place where he felt in control. His fists became his language. The ring gave him the strength and sense of power he couldn't find at home. As a teenager, he started to succeed as an amateur boxer. In fact, in 1969, he entered the Florida Golden Gloves tournament. Friends from those years always described him as stubborn, relentless, and the kind of guy who refused to back down in the ring. But here's the twist. Mickey wasn't only meant for the ring. There was another fire burning inside him. In the early 1970s, he attended Florida State University. But instead of focusing on classes, he spent most of his time hanging around the theater club. That's where he discovered the freedom of the stage. The boy who fought with his fists in the ring became a man who could reveal his emotions under the spotlight. And that transition would change his life forever. In 1971, Mickey made a decision to seriously study acting. He moved to New York and applied to the prestigious Actors Studio run by Lee Strasberg. Getting accepted there was a turning point. Imagine it, Marlon Brando and Al Pacino had walked those halls. And now this scrappy ex-boxer was trying to prove himself on the same stage. Even Strasberg himself noticed Mickey's raw talent and offered him private lessons. That was the first real door that opened toward Hollywood. But here's the thing, Mickey was never an easy person. From the start, he was rebellious, unpredictable, the kind of actor who clashed with directors. That made him stand out, but it also planted a shadow that would later sabotage his own career. By the early 1980s, Mickey started landing small roles. In Body Heat, 1981, his brief but magnetic performance grabbed critics' attention. It was just one short scene, but everyone noticed the charisma. Director Lawrence Kasdan even said, he was on screen for a moment, but he stole the film. That was when Hollywood realized a new bad boy had arrived. Then came Rumble Fish, 1983, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Mickey's troubled, charismatic character stood out, and the industry started paying closer attention. A year later, The Pope of Greenwich Village, 1984, cemented him as a true leading man. Women adored him, men wanted to be him, and critics whispered that a new Brando had been born. But Mickey's most iconic leap came in 1986 with 9.5 Weeks. Starring opposite Kim Basinger, the erotic drama catapulted him to international stardom. The film sparked controversy for its raw sensuality, and Mickey was instantly crowned the sexiest man in Hollywood. Around the world, his face was on magazine covers. Here's what mattered, though. Mickey wasn't just a pretty face. He could act. In Barfly, 1987, playing Charles Bukowski's alter ego Henry Chinaski, he proved it. He embodied the role of a broken, alcoholic soul so truthfully that critics showered him with praise. This was Mickey at his artistic peak, both magnetic and authentic. But at the same time, his personal life mirrored his on-screen characters, chaotic, wild, and full of drama. Affairs, temper outbursts, clashes on set. Constant fights with directors. Mickey Rourke was not only Hollywood's hottest star, but also its most self-destructive. So in one hand, he was Hollywood's golden boy. In the other, his own demons never let him go. And those demons would eventually drag him back into the boxing ring and to the lowest point of his life. Mickey Rourke's rise in the 1980s was nothing short of a Hollywood storm. Imagine this. On one hand, he was the heartthrob with piercing looks that made women fall in love. On the other, he was the rebel actor whose unpredictable temper made directors nervous. In other words, the perfect bad boy figure. And let's be honest, Hollywood has always loved its bad boys. Charismatic, dangerous, and impossible to control. Mickey embodied all of that. His international fame skyrocketed with 9.5 weeks in 1986. The chemistry he shared with Kim Basinger was so intense that once the film hit theaters, everyone everywhere was talking about him. Women saw his face as the definition of eroticism, while men envied his effortless cool. But the movie wasn't just about sex, it became a phenomenon because of Mickey's mysterious, vulnerable presence. At that point,
He was officially crowned the sexiest man alive.
magazines called him the new Marlon Brando. Newspapers ran headlines saying he was going to change cinema forever. But there was another side to his reputation. Mickey was also known as difficult, fiery, and stubborn. Directors never denied his talent, but they warned that working with him was a constant battle. In 1987, he stunned everyone with Barfly. Playing Henry Chinaski, the alter ego of Charles Bukowski, he portrayed a broken, alcoholic writer with such raw authenticity that audiences and critics were left speechless. This wasn't just a handsome leading man anymore. This was a true artist who could bare his soul on screen. Many critics said, "The future of Hollywood is in Mickey's hands." But his private life told a different story, one of chaos and destruction. In 1989, he met model Cara Otis, and their relationship was as passionate as it was toxic. They starred together in Wild Orchid, a movie already controversial for its eroticism. But the real drama was behind the camera. Mickey and Cara's relationship was described in the media as fire and gunpowder. Fights, rumors of violence, reconciliations, breakups, it was paparazzi gold. Mickey's name was no longer tied only to films, it became tabloid material. The press covered every bar fight, every meltdown, every set argument. And here is where the first cracks in his career began to show. Producers and directors started seeing him as a liability, too risky to work with. At the same time, Mickey shocked Hollywood with a personal decision. At the height of his fame, he suddenly announced he was leaving acting to return to boxing. Can you even imagine? One of the most talked about actors in the world at that time wanted to walk away from the spotlight to get back in the ring. Fans couldn't believe it, but Mickey insisted. Boxing had been his first love, his lifelong obsession. The adrenaline he felt in the ring was something Hollywood could never give him. This choice would change everything. Returning to the ring dragged him into a downward spiral, both physically and emotionally. In 1991, Mickey officially stepped into a professional boxing career, but reality hit hard literally. After years away from the sport, there was almost no chance he could succeed against seasoned fighters. Every fight left him with brutal damage. His nose was broken, his cheekbones shattered, his jaw damaged. Over time, his once gorgeous face became nearly unrecognizable. The man once celebrated as Hollywood's sex symbol could no longer even look at himself in the mirror. This was the beginning of Mickey Rourke's fall from grace. Big projects slipped away and his body was destroyed in the ring. But Mickey's stubborn nature wouldn't let him quit.
He kept saying, "I'm Mickey Rourke."
Nobody tells me what to do, not Hollywood, not boxing. For his die-hard fans, this rebellious attitude only made him more legendary. But in the eyes of Hollywood executives, it was the final red flag. Even if he returned to film, they feared the anger, the unpredictability, and now his altered appearance would ruin what once made him magnetic. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Mickey stood at a crossroads. On one path was staying Hollywood's golden boy. On the other was chasing his personal obsession, no matter the cost. And Mickey chose the second. That choice would come with the heaviest price of his life. For Mickey Rourke, the mid to late 1990s were nothing short of a nightmare. The man who was once the sexiest face in Hollywood, the star women dreamed about and directors fought to cast, now looked into the mirror and barely recognized himself. The damage from the boxing ring wasn't enough his attempts to fix. It through plastic surgery only made things worse. By then, Mickey's face had taken brutal hits. His nose had been broken multiple times. his cheekbones fractured. He underwent countless surgeries to repair the damage. But Mickey, stubborn as always, kept pushing for more operations despite warnings. In later interviews, he admitted, "My nose and cheekbones were smashed. I went to the wrong doctors, and my face got worse. The results were devastating." Mickey Rourke became almost unrecognizable. The former golden boy of Hollywood was now the butt of cruel jokes. Tabloids ran side-by-side comparisons of his old photos and new ones with headlines like, "What happened to this man?" The gossip press branded him the actor who destroyed himself. Hollywood turned its back on him too. In this business, your face is your currency, and Mickey had lost his. Producers thought his charisma had faded, and directors didn't want to deal with his temper and unpredictability. A man who once commanded leading roles was now barely considered for background parts. Financially, things spiraled as well. With no big projects coming in, debts piled up. His once lavish lifestyle collapsed.
He sold his house, got rid of his expensive cars.
At one point, Mickey admitted he was nearly homeless, surviving only because a few loyal friends helped him out. But the cruelest blow came from the public itself. The man once hailed as a sex symbol was now mocked as plastic face. People weren't talking about his films anymore. They were laughing at his botched surgeries. By the late 90s, Mickey Rourke had become Hollywood's forgotten man. During this time, depression consumed him. In interviews, he admitted to suicidal thoughts, but said his dogs saved his life. Mickey's love for his pets became legendary. He once said, "The most loyal friends I've ever had were my dogs. People left me, but they stayed." That line broke hearts. It revealed just how isolated he truly felt. His personal life was also a wreck.
His marriage to Cara Otis was filled with scandal.
Allegations of abuse, messy lawsuits, and relentless tabloid attention further destroyed his image. Once seen as Hollywood's golden couple, Mickey and Cara were now labeled the pair who ruined each other. Through it all, Mickey kept drifting back to the boxing ring. But this time, he wasn't the same fighter. The blows landed harder, the injuries worse. The ring no longer saved him. It only damaged him further. His career was collapsing on both fronts, in Hollywood and in the ring. By the end of the 1990s, Mickey Rourke had become two things: a faded memory of past glory and a tragic figure of the present. People no longer asked about his movies. They asked, "What happened to that beautiful man?" These were the darkest years of his life, and yet Mickey's story wasn't over. Because if there's one thing about him, it's this: he knew how to rise from the ashes. The deeper he fell, the closer he came to a comeback no one, least of all Hollywood, could have predicted. By the early 2000s, Mickey Rourke was like Hollywood's lost child. Once the sexiest man alive, the most sought-after star, he was now living in the shadows. His face was unrecognizable after botched surgeries. His career seemed over, and the press had written him off completely. But Mickey's story was never about fading quietly into the background. He was the kind of man who always found a way to rise after hitting rock bottom. During this time, Mickey started popping up in small roles. In 2000, he appeared alongside Sylvester Stallone in Get Carter. It wasn't a big part, but it reminded audiences that Mickey's still here. Then, in 2001, he caught Robert Rodriguez's attention and landed a role in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Slowly, Hollywood began to notice him again. But nobody believed he could ever be a true leading man again. The real turning point came in 2005 with Sin City. Playing Marv, a gritty anti-hero pulled straight from Frank Miller's comic, Mickey transformed himself with heavy makeup and raw energy. His performance was so powerful that many critics said he stole the entire movie. Suddenly, people were whispering, "The old Mickey is back." But the real miracle happened in 2008. Darren Aronofsky cast him in The Wrestler, a film that felt eerily close to Mickey's own life. He played Randy the Ram Robinson, an aging wrestler who once had glory but now lived with loneliness, brokenness, and regret. In many ways, Mickey wasn't acting, he was living. His performance was brutally honest. The tired eyes, the battered body, the lost pride, all of it came straight from his own experiences. As Aronofsky later said, "I didn't ask Mickey to play a character. I asked him to bring his life." And that's exactly what he did. When The Wrestler premiered, the world was stunned. The man everyone thought was finished had delivered the best performance of his life. Critics couldn't stop praising him. He won the Golden Globe and was nominated for an Academy Award. Many believed he would win the Oscar. He didn't, but in a way, it didn't matter. Mickey had already won something far greater: Hollywood's respect. His Golden Globe speech became unforgettable. Mickey broke down in tears as he thanked his dogs, saying, "The only thing that kept me alive were my dogs." The room fell silent. Everyone realized they weren't just watching an actor, they were witnessing a man who had survived pain, loss, and regret, and had turned it into art. But Mickey's comeback was never going to be perfectly smooth. He was still Mickey Rourke, fiery, unpredictable, sometimes his own worst enemy. In interviews, he lashed out. On sets, he could still cause trouble. Hollywood embraced him again, but always with caution, "Be careful, Mickey might explode." Still, the wrestler gave him momentum. In 2010, he joined the Marvel Universe as the villain Whiplash in Iron Man 2. For most actors, this would be a dream. But Mickey clashed with the studio, accusing Marvel of cutting his role down and killing his vision. Once again, he proved he could never fully play by Hollywood's rules. By the end of the 2000s, Mickey Rourke was back on the map, not as the flawless golden boy of the 80s, but as a battle-scarred survivor who had forced Hollywood to respect him again. His story had become one of the wildest comeback arcs in film history. Mickey had risen to the top in the 80s, fallen to rock bottom in the 90s, and been reborn in the 2000s. But the real question remained, would this rebirth last? Or would Mickey once again disappear into his own shadows? By the 2010s, Mickey Rourke's story had already become a legend. He had lived through one of Hollywood's greatest rises, one of its most dramatic downfalls, and one of its most shocking comebacks. But the years that followed were about something else, searching for peace while learning to live with the shadows of his past. His role in Iron Man 2 was both a chance and a disappointment. Being part of Marvel introduced him to a younger generation, but Mickey clashed with the studio, later claiming his character had been cut down. It was yet another reminder that he could never truly fit into the Hollywood system. Mickey always played by his own rules, and he always paid the price for it. Then came The Expendables. Sylvester Stallone brought him into the ensemble as a tribute, a way of saying Hollywood still respected him. Mickey's screen time wasn't long, but his presence alone electrified fans. In the mid-2010s, Mickey focused more on independent films. Big studios weren't his world, and he knew it. What mattered to him was finding characters he could relate to, roles that carried a piece of his own soul.
He dipped into projects like Immortals, but his strongest impact remained with darker,
More personal roles, but truthfully, Mickey's later years weren't defined by film sets. They were defined by his personal life. He spent more and more time with his beloved dogs, often saying in interviews, "If it weren't for my dogs, I would have killed myself a long time ago." That wasn't just a dramatic statement. It was his reality. For Mickey, loyalty and love lived in their eyes, not in Hollywood's fleeting spotlight. The media, of course, never stopped talking about his face. For years, his botched surgeries were mocked, but as time passed, people began to shift focus. They stopped seeing only the scars and started remembering the story. Mickey Rourke wasn't just another actor. He was the man who had lived Hollywood's extremes, glory, collapse, comeback, and quiet survival. Even years after The Wrestler, his performance remained unforgettable. Young actors looked up to him, calling him the bravest of his generation. Critics described him as Hollywood's conscience in conflict with itself. Because Mickey had never bowed to the system. He won, he lost, but he always chose his own path. His personal life, however, remained fragile. His chaotic marriage to Cara Otis was long behind him, but no great love replaced it. Mickey lived quietly between Los Angeles and New York, surrounded by his dogs. Sometimes he was spotted in nightclubs, sometimes in boxing gyms, but he no longer craved the spotlight like before. To fans, he remained the lost leading man. Women still looked at his photos from the 80s and sighed, "How did he end up like this?" Men admired his defiance, his refusal to surrender, even when it destroyed him. And that is where Mickey Rourke's legacy lies. He was the actor who broke Hollywood's rules, destroyed himself, and yet rose again to teach everyone what survival looks like. Today, he still appears in films here and there, still gives interviews. But Mickey's true story isn't told on screen anymore. It's written in the scars on his face, in the blows he took in the ring, and in the way he holds on to the loyalty of his dogs. Think about it once. He was every woman's dream and every director's favorite. Then he became a man who couldn't stand to look at himself in the mirror. And yet, despite all the chaos, Mickey Rourke carved out a place in Hollywood history. Because he wasn't just an actor, he was a survival story.